the technologies that are available now and shortly that can boost the body's ability to fight aging and even reverse it. We put them into a couple of buckets. We've talked about this in previous episodes. There's the adversity mimetics, which we love, which is really slowing down aging and reversing it, or the abundance mimetics that give you a short-term gain, make you look good, but long-term may not work or even have deleterious effects.
And this is usually the part in the podcast where I say, hey, David, we have to thank our sponsors, but actually there's something else we need to do because there was something we neglected to talk about in our last episode. And it was a pretty glaring oversight on our part.
Well, we focused a lot on testosterone, which is used by men and women increasingly, but we neglected to talk about other hormones that are not found much in men, estrogen, progesterone. And this pertains to menopause, hormonal therapy, and overall hormone replacement therapy for women. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why this is really both interesting and important is because menopause affects the first part of our body to really, the first organ in a woman's body to really experience the effects of biological aging.
Right, sometimes even in women's 20s, but late 30s, early 40s, this can occur.
And
certainly by the
this
50s.
is often before your heart starts to show damage, your lungs start to show damage from aging, your brain even.
Yeah, and there are ways of making sure that you go through that transition, if you're a woman, in a more natural way. And so we actually called up a friend of mine, Cindy Meston, who's a professor in Austin, who has given us some really good advice, given that you and I are men. We typically don't know a lot about this, but...
And should not lecture on it.
No, we're not lecturing, but we will talk about how it pertains to aging and what the current thought about HRT actually is.
Well, can you take us through, we had this conversation several years ago and it stuck with me for a really long time. Can you talk about why it is that the female reproductive system ages earlier than the rest of the body? You started to notice this in mice.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the reasons we studied fertility in mice, because we could get those experiments done more quickly, and we discovered, and we'll bring this up in a later episode, that we can reverse female infertility with molecules that stimulate these sirtuins we work on. But today we're going to talk about the late part of life, about how to replace those hormones. The reason you need to do that is that we've evolved as a species to have children up until the age of about 30, and then we should stop. Why? Because having kids as a woman is very dangerous. There was a time when I think there was a 1 in 5 chance you would die from childbirth.
You need to be younger, more vigorous to just get through that process.
Right. And then you have to put a lot of effort into raising those kids. It's not like an insect where you just let them blow away in the wind. You have to spend at least a decade, and these days 2 decades, raising those kids. And if you keep doing that your whole life, it might take away from the energy that you put into the ones that you have. So for that reason, women have evolved to become infertile around the age of 40.
And that process that they go through is menopause. And it's for some women, it's brutal.
For sure. There's the well-known things. There's mood swings, vaginal dryness, loss of sex drive, migraines, hot flashes, of course. There's also really serious effects on health, including increased susceptibility to heart disease. So this is clearly something that needs to be addressed. And there are increasingly better ways to be able to allow women to not just transition through menopause, but to continue having the right hormone levels to protect them against aging long-term.
And one of these things is menopausal hormone therapy, which is chiefly and has been traditionally chiefly estrogen replacement, although increasingly other hormones are explored. And this is treatment that can offer people a lot of symptomatic relief. There were concerns for a really long time that it had some pretty gnarly side effects itself and even could do some long-term damage. We're learning more about that right now, though.
Estrogen used to be used primarily, and now what we're finding is that the dual use of estrogen and progesterone in the right combination and ratio and timing is really important.